Hey, hello everybody. Um, so wait for the string to pick up. There we go. I wanted to come live today to talk to you about having special needs children. So I did my first live on raising a special needs child. You can find that in video library. And I talked about my first child with special needs. And now I'm going to talk about my second child and my third child this evening, or this morning. Okay, so with my second child, we'll start off with that one. With my second child, um, she was born and she she was a preemie. This was 20 years ago. Plus, so my first child was 20 plus years ago when she was born. This child was 20 years ago when she was born. And so I want you to keep that in mind while I tell my story. So when you think, well, why didn't you this or why didn't you that? Well, it was 20 years ago. So there were not the wonderful communities set up that they have now for children with special needs and their parents. I'm just going to shift my nose ring there. Um, these communities were not in existence at that time for the most part. The internet was not at all what it is right now at that time. Um, and so, even though it is still very isolating to have a special needs child, it was even more so then. There were not the specialists and doctors everywhere that there are now. And there really wasn't the internet to connect parents to one another and to do quick lookups of different symptoms and all that kind of thing that you can do easily now. So I really very much so had to work through the entire process by myself. Now, I had at the time that she was born, I had a tiny bit of experience because she came not too long after her sister. So I had a little bit of experience with raising a special needs child by that point, but really not a lot at all. And so when she was born, she was not verbal at all in any kind of way. I mean, obviously, a newborn is not verbal, but there, once again, was not the crying and all of that. Just a lot of looking up and staring and everything. I did know from my first child, I was more aware of nutrition with her, but there really just wasn't that bond and that action and reaction that you get when you have a child. Um, and so as she got older, just really realized that she did a lot of looking and staring, but not a lot of reaction or seemingly understanding of my husband and I. And so, um, took her to the doctors. No, nobody could really find anything that was wrong with her per se. And then fast forward to, and so she didn't communicate. Um, we would know when she wanted something because she would appear and stare at us, stare over us, like if we were sitting down or whatever, or if we were even in bed, she'd just appear there. And we had a nickname for her. We called her Blank Face, and we said that very lovingly. Actually, my husband's friend came up with that name for her because her expression was always blank. We noticed that she was attracted to the TV and she would sit this close to the screen. And so I thought, oh my gosh, she can't see. She's blind or something, or partially blind or something like that. Took her, and as I said in my first video, we were at this point 20 years ago, we were very, very poor, didn't have any resources really, but spent every last dollar we had trying to send her to specialists and see what was wrong. We took her to an ophthalmologist, and the ophthalmologist said she's perfectly fine. Her eyesight is fine. I just found it hard to believe that she could see and she was completely non responsive. And she had to sit that close to the TV, which was a clue to me. So, um, and it was just so crazy and bizarre because she would just get like right up on you and stare at you. And then we'd have to figure out exactly what she needed. Was she hungry, or what did she need? Because she was unable to communicate. And so she was not verbal um, at it in the typical window where a child becomes verbal. She was not verbal. And also noticed things like she was kind of, I don't know a word for it, otherworldly, just kind of like floated around, not aware of what was going on around her. Um, and she liked to sleep with Tonka trucks and shoes. Okay, so just odd behavior. And so, uh, because we're in the great state of California as far as children with disabilities go, and I said this in my video yesterday, if you have a child who has severe special needs, unfortunately, even in 2022, there are still not a lot of states that have excellent resources available to you. And so I would say if you have a severely special needs child, you really need to consider, and you love that child and you want to do what's best for that child, you really need to consider moving to California, because that's really where they're going to have all hundreds and hundreds of resources for you that you will be able to take advantage of, and your child will be able to flourish. Because the first 5 years are the most important years in a child's development. That's when your child's brain, at the end of 5 years, is basically the size of an adult's. So those neural pathways and connections are vital the first 5 years. And so you don't want to wait on that, because the first 5 years are like the foundation of a house. If you do not build a strong foundation, it is exceedingly difficult to fix that after the house is built. And that's the way it is if you do not take advantage of the first 5 years in your child's development. So we put her in play therapy, kind of so that she could learn how to play with other children, even though she had a sibling at this point, her older sister, but just how to do normal things, like for her to learn what were normal behaviors and actions, because all of her, this is, y'all can see my notes that I took, and then my hand was wet and they got transposed onto my hand. But anyway, so we did that for her, and we just really weren't sure what else to do with her. So around 3 years old, um, she became very sickly. So she was a healthy girl until about 3 years old. She became extremely sickly at that point. Her hair fell out, and she also developed a continual green snot that came out of her nose at all times. And she also had severe asthma. So it was really stressful and very hard for me being a young parent without the internet community and mom communities and all the wonderful things that are around right now, um, caring for her. She lost a lot of weight, and I mean a lot of weight for a small child, because she didn't obviously have a lot of weight to begin with, and she lost a lot of weight. And once again, going to doctors, going to specialists, nobody knows really exactly what's wrong with her. And so to speed the story up, I put her, I got her at 2 years old. I filed for SSI for her, and it was denied. And I want to encourage any of you parents who are out there who do file for SSI for your children. Typically, they are denied, even if you have, proof from doctors and write-ups and all of that. It's just what the Social Security system does. They deny first and don't give up. And that's what they count on the majority of people doing is applying, getting denied, and giving up, or going and hiring an extremely expensive attorney. Disability lawyers are very expensive, and excuse me, the majority of people who file for disability, of course, don't have money. That's why to care for their kids properly with special needs, and that's why they're filing for disability. If you have money for that, you don't need disability. And so a lot of people are deterred because they cannot afford to file for it. But let me encourage you, you need to keep on applying, keep on gathering information, seeing specialists and things of that nature, and take it all the way to court, which is what I did. I took it all the way to court. I argued my own case. I learned all the case law behind disabilities in the state of California. For myself, I would spend endless hours poring over information and doing research. And I went to court, and the judge, I remember, asked us in the chamber, and he wanted to speak to her one on one. And he spoke to her, and Paige was, oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to say her name. Good grief. It's the second time I've done this. And she was nonverbal. And she was also, what did he describe her as? In kind of a comatose state, but awake. Um, Expressionless, nonverbal, and all of that. And he granted her SSI. And so I was able to have SSI benefits, which made it very much easier at that point, because then I was able to use Medicaid to see the specialists and everybody else that I needed to see for her, and make sure that she got the medical care that the specialized medical care that we really could not afford ourselves at that time. Um, and I remember I took her to a neurologist, and I say this story as a cautionary tale to all of you out there, to all you mamas, please trust your gut. Um, as with my first child, we took her to a lot of doctors that gave a lot of misdiagnoses. And a lot of times, if you're young and you are naive or ignorant, and when I say ignorant, I don't mean that as a bad thing. You know what you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And and a lot of times when we're ignorant of medical situations because of lack of research, or because we aren't doctors ourselves, or because we haven't been through all of this before, we trust what somebody who is quote unquote a specialist tells us, who's gone to med school and done residency and is a certified doctor. And I took her to this neurologist of repute, and he told me, I want to put her on this medication. This medication is not made for children. This was my three, can I not hold up three fingers? 3-year-old daughter. Okay. He said, I want to put her on this medication that they don't have a current dose for children, but I think it will be beneficial to her, and we're going to just experiment with dosage. Now, I believe in my heart of hearts that had I not been a person of color, and this is a really big deal if you are a parent of a special needs child and you are a person of color, you have to be very, very diligent. You have to be up on everything. You have to be very cautious, and you need to follow your heart. When your heart tells you something isn't right, you need to follow your gut. Okay. You need to be prayerful. I believe in my heart of hearts that if I had not been a person of color, there is no way that this man would have suggested giving this medication to my child. Never, ever, ever would he have. And so I got the prescription, and he said, we're going to start off with this much of the pill. And I took the prescription to my local pharmacy, and I just thank God for the angel that he placed there at the pharmacy. the pharmacist, and if you know anything about pharmacies typically will fill whatever. You give them a prescription and they fill it. And depending on what the prescription is for, they may or may not come and tell you, the side effects or whatever of the prescription. Um, but most often they fill it and they send you on your way. Well, when I went to pick up the prescription, the pharmacist said to me, he said, I'm not allowed to, apparently, they have a lot of things that they're not allowed to say or whatever. But he said, I'm not allowed to really say anything, but he said, how old is the person that you're giving this medication to? And I told him my 3-year-old daughter got it prescribed by a neurologist, and he told me what the medication was. And he said, I can't intervene or, can't tell you that you can't give this to your child. But he said, this is an antipsychotic medication. And I said, what? He said, this is an antipsychotic medication that is not approved for use on children. And he said is extremely, extremely powerful. This man, I'm convinced, was trying to kill my kid, or he was trying to use my child as an experiment. And I have no doubt that had I given that medication to my daughter, that she would have been irreparably harmed, irreparably. And I thanked him so very much. I was crying, and I did not give her the medication, and I did not go back to that neurologist. Had I been the Tish Tillis that I am now, the advocate that I am now, with the knowledge that I have now, I would have sued him to death. I would have taken him to the California Supreme Court. But at that time, I was not who I am now, and so I just didn't go back to him. Anyway, we came to find out, finally it occurred to me, you know what, let me take her to see an audiologist. Well, came to find out that she was deaf. And that is why she was sitting so close to the television. That's why she was completely nonverbal. And she only communicated with us through her eyes. Now, that didn't explain still a lot of other very bizarre behaviors that she had, but that was one piece of the puzzle. And remember, she's still extremely sickly. So we took her to the audiologist, and once again, another angel. She needed a surgery that our insurance didn't cover. We were completely, I don't even know if we had insurance outside of Medicaid at that time. I don't know. I don't remember. But it was an operation that we were completely and totally unable to afford. And this guy was, he was like in South Pass, and he was, a really great doctor and all of that. And it was like all of my money just to get in the door to see him. And I guess he saw, I don't know if he saw the desperation in my face or what, but he said to me, and I have no doubt that he's not living anymore, which is the only reason I'm saying this, because I wouldn't want him to get in any kind of trouble at all. But he said to me, he had a very large office, and he had, an kind of like a semi-operating suite in there for obviously things that were not as major as what my daughter needed. But he said, if you're willing to sign a waiver, he said, I can perform the surgery here on her in my office. And that's what I did. I signed the waiver. He performed the surgery. I think we had to go there twice for the procedure. And I remember at one point my daughter's ears popped and all manner of things oozed and gushed out. And we went back and saw him, and he worked on her some more. And miraculously, because I do believe this is a miracle, she regained her hearing. Or I shouldn't say regained, she never had it. She gained her hearing. And I mean to tell you that this kid was talking like 2 weeks later. She was talking. And I mean talking. it was just the whole thing was miraculous. And she hasn't stopped talking since. I'm thankful to say. You would never ever know. And so now, with that taken care of, her hearing taken care of, the next thing that I was moving on to conquer was, what is going on with my child? Why is she so sickly? Why does she look so sickly? Why does she have this green snot coming out of her nose constantly? Why does she have severe, severe asthma? And when I say she had severe, severe asthma, my child would have attacks where we would think that she was going to die, attacks where we were calling 911. Where I constantly had an inhaler with me, or her, I don't remember what the machine is that you hook them up to. I don't remember what that's called right now, the nebulizer, and all of that. And it was really scary because as a mom, and by this point, my third child had been born. And as a mom, I had to go out, I had to run errands and things of that nature. And I never knew when she was going to have an asthma attack. I mean, I remember one time we were at Walmart and she almost died. Um, just really scary stuff. I did notice also that she was completely unaware, even as she got older, of her surroundings. She was completely spaced out at all times, could not focus, was not able to do basic things that children her age were able to do. And I knew there was something neurological going on, but nobody could pinpoint exactly what. And so that began years and years and years and years. And God gave me the patience and the grace and taught me what to do, of saying everything over and over and over and over and over again to her, and showing her and showing her and showing her and showing her, and just developing routine and repetition. Routine and repetition is what I did for years and years and years and years and years. But going back, um, here's another heavenly encounter that I had, and I'm convinced that's exactly what it was. So one day I was at an extreme low point. I had her in the same school as my first daughter, um, in the special needs classroom. Uh, fabulous school in California where they dealt with, which they do in California. They have many, many, many classrooms to different types of disabilities and levels of those disabilities. They're not just all thrown into one classroom like they do here in Texas. And so I was feeling very, very low. I didn't know what to do. I was exhausted. I was at my wit's end with her illness. And I was on the steps of the school, and I think I had just dropped her off, and I was on the steps of the school, and I think I was just standing there with my head down. I may have been crying. I don't know what it was, but this woman came up to me and I started talking to her. And I guess I explained what was happening with Paige. I'm assuming, I don't remember, because I don't know, but I don't remember. But anyway, she told me exactly what to do for her. And I mean, she told me so specifically what to do that I know she was an angel sent from God. And I did what she told me to do. And she was cured for the most part. Her asthma attacks went on for some years more. But let me tell you, okay, my child was on 14 medications. She was on 14 medications. And we got her adenoids removed, her tonsils removed. We got tubes put in her ears, and that stopped the constant green snot. She started gaining weight again. Her hair never recovered fully, but she started gaining weight again. And it was miraculous. And one day the Lord told me to take her off of all of her medications. I don't know how old she was then. At that point, maybe 10. Oh, she also got pertussis because she had a weakened immune system. I remember she got pertussis. and the state of California quarantined our house. Like, that doesn't even happen in modern day, right? But we were quarantined in our house. And at that point, when she got pertussis, it was so bad that the doctor told me, prepare for her to die. Excuse me? No, sir. No, sir. I will not prepare for that. And I remember praying about that. And I mean, we have had so many special needs adventures and so much that we've gone through and experienced. And anyway, one day the Lord told me to take her off all of her medications cold turkey, which of course they say you are never to do. But you know what? I know it was the Lord who told me to do it. I took her off all 14 medications, and within the year, she had her last asthma attack, and she has been healthy as a horse ever since. Okay, I am not a doctor. I do not know your situation. I am not advising you to do what I did. I am just here recounting my story because my situation and my child and all of that are completely different from your situation and your child. So I'm not telling you to do what I did. Okay, I want to make that completely clear. I am not a medical provider in any way, shape, or form. But that's what I feel the Lord told me to do, and that's what I did. Um, so she was still extremely spaced out. I mean, she would get into the bathtub and you would find her in there. And this is when she was older, of course. She would get into the bathtub, you would find her in there, and she'd have all her clothes on. Um, and so, um, once again, just like with my first child, my goal was to make sure that she would be able to function in the event of my death. Now, obviously, I'm going to die. So it's not about, am I going to die? But as a special needs parent, your first and foremost thought should always be, what do I need to do in order to make my child as fully functioning as possible for when I die, so that they will be able to live out there in the world. Um, Now, depending on what your child's situation is, um, that may or may not be possible. But I do encourage you to work with your child with expectation continuously, to continuously work with your child with expectation. Not and to discard to maybe a certain point. Once again, not a medical doctor, don't know your child's situation, but I think you have to take with a grain of salt what doctors tell you when they tell you things that are limiting, that your child won't be able to this or won't be able to that or won't be able to that. Because I know from experience with my first two children that my attitude was, my child is going to be just as typical as a typical child, as I can possibly make them. And so, like I said, consistency, repetition, and routine is what I did with this child year in, year out, day in, day out, month in, month out. And um, while she still suffers from neurological issues, still suffers from losing focus, finding it very hard to focus, can't take a lot of commands at once, and that kind of thing. She is fully functioning. She is in college. If you were to speak with her, you would have no clue that she has a disability. She's flourishing, flourishing, okay, at the age of 20. And I could not be more proud of her and her progress and where she is. But a lot of that behind her progress and success is a mama that refused to treat her any differently, to look at her any differently. Yes, I have to be careful. I had to be careful about, somebody always had to be with her. Somebody always had to be watching her. She almost got kidnapped once. when literally I turned my back for 1 second. Um, because somebody got right up on her, and because of her lack of awareness, she did not realize that that wasn't okay, or that wasn't normal. I used to do this. Judge me if you want. uh this was many, many, many years ago, many, 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 many years ago. But I did, what I would do is, because back then, if you had a store that you went into, they knew you, you knew the people at that store or whatever. And so I had someone that I knew at my local grocery store, and to work on her awareness, um, I would watch her because she kind of wander off, and wouldn't come to the, wait, where's mom, where's, what's going on. And so I would place her somewhere and let her, and I'd have, you know, the people that I knew there who worked at the store, and I would say, I'm going to leave her right here. I'm going to be right over here. I'm going to be close to her. I'm going to be watching her every second. But I want her to realize and feel fear, because fear is something that you need to be able to feel instinctually. It keeps us safe, it keeps us alert, it keeps us aware. And she didn't have that. And so I wanted to work on building that, not so that she would be fearful, but that she would have awareness when she was outside of her home. I had to teach it to her somehow that you need to be alert and aware of your surroundings and the people around you and all of that. And so I would do that. And she would first, she'd be spaced out and looking around and everything. And then she would kind of like have a moment of clarity and, where's mom? Where's mom? And I would walk up to her. So, in other words, at no time was she in danger of being snatched, because I was very close by, and I had the staff people, and I only did this when they weren't working and they had free time. I would have them watch her as well and make sure nobody actually got near her. But, then I'd walk up to her and I would say, do you see that you found yourself by yourself and you didn't know where you were or what was going on or whatever? You have to stay aware. Somebody could have snatched you, And we used to do that, and it slowly built awareness in her for when she was out. Even now at 20, we do not allow her to be out by herself. It's just not safe for her, because she does lapse in and out of, I don't want to say consciousness, but she lapses in and out of awareness. And so she has a fabulous boyfriend who goes everywhere with her when she leaves the house. Um, if her father and I aren't with her, or her sister is with her, or there's always somebody there with her, or her friends are with her, or something like that. She doesn't go places by herself. It's just not safe. And she realizes that it's not safe for her, that she does have periods of time when she's just not aware. Driving is an issue. Obviously, she's a young woman. She wants to drive. I don't want her to drive, because I'm like, you're not aware long enough to, I mean, when you're out there on the road right now in 2022, you have to be aware at all times. People are running lights, people are doing crazy things, people jump into your lane, all kinds of situations, and you cannot lapse while you're driving. She wants to drive. Her father and I don't necessarily, well, her father, he feels like, throw her out there. But, I don't want her driving. And so it's been an issue of contention for a while. I know that she is going to eventually drive, because she's a strong willed, um, wanting to be independent young woman. But it's very scary to me. I'm very concerned about her driving. So there are, when you have a child with special needs, there are always going to be ongoing issues, because yes, you are able to keep them safe for 18 years. And if you figured out how to keep them safe and to keep them flourishing for 18 years, it's a great accomplishment, and you're happy and you're proud of that. But then you also need to prepare for when they become of age and they get out there on their own, because children want to be independent, whether it's what's best for them or not. And as a parent, you do want them to be independent, but at the same time, you feel the need to protect them. And so it's very difficult, the situation that parents of special needs children find ourselves in. We want them to be independent because we want them to be able to live. We're going to die. We want them to be able to live on their own. We want them to be safe. We want to secure them. Like I said in my last video, if you are a young parent of a special needs child, I cannot stress enough the importance of opening a Roth IRA, getting your money in order so that if you have a child that is going to need continual care, whether it's for a physical ailment, they are non functioning in some sort of way or something like that, or because they're not going to be able to work. Um, or whatever the case may be, that you um, think ahead while they're young to when they get older, and you have money set aside in a trust of some sort for them. Very, very, very important. I cannot stress it enough. You're not thinking about it when they're 2 years old, but trust me, you will need that large sum of money when they get older, whether it's for procedures or equipment or whatever. My oldest daughter, who's special needs, has had, due to her genetic disability, she's had countless surgeries. She's had so many surgeries that I cannot keep track of them. Um, she's been in the hospital probably more days in her life that she's been at home. And all of this costs money: the surgeries, the equipment, the follow up appointments, the gas to the appointments. Um, all of it is exceedingly financially draining. And so I encourage you to make a plan. One of the things that we decided very, very early on with our children, very early on with our children, was that I was going to stay at home with them. There was just no way that I feel confident with them continuing on in school. There was no way that, with all of the doctor's appointments and specialists and therapies and everything else, that I could work a full time job and take proper care of my children. And so I did stay at home, but in order to be able to do that, you have to be willing to make sacrifices. We never had cable. We never had, cell phones like the newest cell phones. We never had, we went to the thrift store and got all of our clothes. And I was blessed with finding some really great thrift stores with really great clothing. We had one car, just all kinds of sacrifices that had to be made for our kids so that they could see the doctors and see the specialists and go to the therapies. And so that's another thing you need to get your mind around if you do not have a lot of finances, because SSI, if you have a child who's truly disabled, SSI, even if you receive that, is not going to cover all of your expenses probably, and all of the visits and all of that. And even more so now than back in the day, thank the Lord for me, back in the day, a lot more doctors took Medicaid, but you know, people don't want to be bothered with Medicaid anymore. You need good private insurance in order to see the top notch people nowadays. And so you just need to have a financial plan above and beyond any and everything. A lot of women may say, oh, well, I have to work in order to pay for these things. But at the end of the day, um, trusting someone with your special needs child, I had someone who attacked my special needs child. Have just a couple horror stories, because I really was with my kids 24/7, 365, but have a couple of horror stories. And there are horrific people out there. And a lot of times, people don't want to work with special needs kids, and they don't treat them right, and they don't respect them. And so I would encourage you not to leave your children with anybody, to make the sacrifices that you need to make in order to stay at home. Even if you think about daycare and things like that, It's basically going to eat up your whole salary unless you're doing something amazing and you're making a lot of money. And if you are, then you need to get somebody who stays at home with your child one on one that you trust, that you have cameras on. Cameras, cameras, cameras. If you leave your special needs child with anybody, cameras, cameras. I don't care if it's a relative, I don't care who it is, cameras. So there's just, for the past 20 years, there's been incredible sacrifice because being the parent of a special needs child is sacrificial and it's humbling, and it can lead to depression and withdrawal and all kinds of things. But like I said, this is 2022. This is not when I was raising my two special needs kids. There are communities out there, um, and there are support groups, and there's a lot of information out there available to you on the internet. Um, but I would say get support for yourself. Get support for yourself. My husband and I, we used to trade off. If I needed a little alone time, he would stay with the kids. If he needed a little alone time, I would stay with the kids. I mean, I was always with the kids, but I mean, I would let him, I would say go off and take a little time for yourself. And he would say go off and take and I don't mean like I left and went to a hotel or something. Like I would just like leave for an hour or whatever. But basically I was always, always, always with my kids. And it took a lot out of me. It aged me. It took a lot out of me. I feel like at my age that I am, I have a lot less life in me than I probably would have if I had not had special needs kids. But they were my children, they were my responsibility, and I could not be more proud of the way they turned out. Now, fast forward the last 15 minutes of this live or less, I'm going to spend on my third special needs child, who I have 5 children. And so this is my last child, um, who is a boy. And I have to smile because by the way, my daughter that I just finished speaking about, she is autistic and she's on the spectrum and has Asperger's and is high functioning. Um, and when I say high functioning, I mean she's got does still have a lot of issues, but as far as autism goes, is considered to be high functioning. Okay, so fast forward to my last child, a boy. When he was born, it was very obvious after having dealt with my second child, that he was autistic as well. And so here's the deal that I can tell you about autistic children. It is vital for how they turn out that you start working with them immediately. So you want to get ABA therapy if you can. You want to do things that, for example, autistic children tend to, and remember, autism is a spectrum. And so you can go from this end all the way to this end. And so when I talk about some things that you will see typically in autistic children, that does not mean that your child will exhibit those behaviors. Okay. They may or may not. So typically they like routine, very big on routine, very important. Routine is extremely important. Typically, they need to feel safe and secure. And they also, their minds go all around. By the way, I have not told you, I'm sorry, ADHD, and I am autistic. And so when I realized that I was autistic, high functioning, it really helped me to help my children and get into their mindset, because I thought, gosh, I know these behaviors very well. Um, Typically need to feel secure. Often, weighted blankets help, weighted backpacks help. Um, let's see, what are other behaviors? Um, Need their minds focused and refocused often. Um, Gosh, there's echolalia, which is repetition of things. They can be very averse to touch. One of the things with me being autistic, I cannot stand my face to be touched. I can handle touching my face occasionally, but I cannot stand for anyone else to touch my face or really my hair. Very difficult for that. I used to wear the same, and I still have this issue. I will fixate on clothing and wear that clothing over and over and over again. And that's very typical with autistic children. Obviously, I keep my clothes washed, but I will fixate on the same outfit for days on end. Um, that is something that you'll see with autistic children. They'll have a favorite sweatshirt or outfit or whatever. Um, there's so much on autism. I can't even think of all of it right now. But of course, autism is very well documented, and you can do a lot of research on the web very easily for yourself, and also get testing. But I would be wary and cautious of testing, especially if you are a person of color and you have a child of color, because very often the school district, as well as doctors, will misdiagnose obviously autistic children of color. And I have experienced that several times myself. Um, let's see. So as I was saying, when my fifth child was born, when we recognized pretty immediately that he was autistic, one of the things we started doing several things. And this was born from my knowledge and knowing what to do. And it made all the difference in the kid he is today. Um, because the specialists and the therapists and all these people did not do these things with him, even though he did have home services that came in and worked with him. So there is, in certain states, there are programs where they will come in when there are early childhood issues detected, and they will come in and the state will provide therapy for you. Which is excellent. But of course, then what happens? It phases out at like age 3, so then it's like you better know what to do yourself. But we got him accustomed to touch. And so we were constantly touching his face, rubbing the sides of his face, making him focus and look into our eyes. Um, Excuse me. And this is sad because so many doctors are not well trained. Autistic, doctors that diagnose autism are often not well trained themselves, because I was told by doctors, oh, he's not autistic. He makes eye contact. Well, that's because we, from a very, very, very young age, took his face, held his head, rubbed his face, and forced him to make eye contact with us. We also would kiss his face all the time, so that he was used to touch, and things that he was typically averse to, we would work on from a very early age. And he is the quirkiest kid ever. He is just great. I feel like autism makes him very, just like I feel with myself. I feel like autism makes myself very special, very different from the average person. When I was very young, I suffered with a great deal of spaced outedness, just like my daughter being spaced out, and still can fall definitely into that. Um, Rabbit hole even as an adult, an adult. Um, really had really wish that they'd had the testing and all of the diagnostic tools available when I was a child that they have now, because I think my life would have been so much easier. But I'm thankful that I am autistic, high functioning autistic, so that I was able to help my children. Um, with their issues. But my son is super quirky, super funny. He has a certain style of speaking. Uh, his personality, I can't imagine him any other way than he is. He's wonderful, and so I just think autistic children are absolutely amazing. I feel like they tap into areas of the brain that typical children just don't. Um, and so, in a nutshell, that's pretty much my experience with special needs. Obviously, I can't tell you my whole experience. It would take weeks to explain to you everything that I've done and experienced. I also definitely want to caution you from day one, from birth. If you feel like there are any issues, problems, special needs with your child, keep every single solitary note, record, everything. Make sure when you go to the doctor, you ask for your records. You go to the hospital, you go and you request your records. Um, every single piece of documentation so that you are able, if you have to support an SSI case, or if you for whatever reason, keep every single document. So I literally have binders and binders and binders worth of documentation on my children from the day they were born. Um, and so it also establishes a pattern. So I keep all that documentation. I doubt that they will need it now that they're adults, but I've done it for 20 years and it's just in blood at this point. But it has served to be invaluable in many junctures in their life. So definitely have an excellent record keeping system. If you do not already, all you need is a binder and, a hole punch, 3-hole punch, and you're able to keep fabulous records, um, which you will need at some point for probably a plethora of different things that you cannot see coming in the future. So do excellent note keeping on your children. Um, I don't know what else to say other than I am a believer that vaccines are influential in causing autism. I believe there's a very strong link, an undeniably strong link. So I know there are a lot of you out there that are pro vaccination, and nothing that I could say or show you would prove otherwise. And that's fine. It's your child, it's your right. You can do what you feel is best. But for those of you who may be on the fence or not know, I would definitely suggest not vaccinating your child. Or if you do vaccinate your child, one vaccination at a time and spreading it out, out, not following the recommended vaccination schedule. Once again, I am not a medical professional. I am not a doctor. I'm not telling you what to do. I am just telling you my experiences and my recommendations. And it's completely up to you as a parent what you do. Once again, I am not in the medical field at all whatsoever. So I am not qualified to give out medical advice. This is just my personal thoughts. These are just my personal thoughts. So, anyway, that's it. If you have any questions of anything you would like to know more about special needs children and I'm able to answer them and I see them, I will be more than happy to answer those for you or perhaps do another live on something specific if I have knowledge of it. Um, but I hope that you found this information helpful in some way and it can help a parent out there. But definitely, you want to hook up with a support group because it is very isolating. Your friends of typical children will not understand your journey. They will not understand what you go through. They will not understand your fears and your hopes and your milestones and everything else. They will not. They may love you, but they will not. So you need to surround yourself with a special needs community and support system. That's very important for your sanity, for your well-being, and all of that. Okay. Um, so that's all I've got for tonight and this morning, I should say. And thank you for watching.